Hey friends, cyber attacks are growing more sophisticated, so it's imperative to find ways to protect your company and your PII, your personally identifiable information. And Azure Lighthouse uses Azure AD, Privileged Identity Management, or PIM, to support zero trust provisioning and to enable secure managed services. Saif and Meagan are here to show me how this new integration works today on Azure Friday. Hey friends, I'm Scott Hanselman and it's Azure Friday. I'm here with Meagan Olsen. How are you?
Hey, Scott, I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out. I'm going to learn all about zero trust provisioning with Azure Lighthouse, which is always a fun topic, and hopefully there'll be a cool demo as well.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. So, customers are migrating to the cloud and they're kind of trying to keep up with these constantly evolving business needs. And what we're really seeing is that they're engaging multiple service providers to kind of help them manage and support their Azure infrastructure. But with all of these service providers kind of gaining access to their environment, it's crucially important that they maintain zero trust security for all the users that are accessing their tenants. So,
What does that mean, zero trust?
so zero trust is built on three principles, and one of the main principles of that is least privileged access. So, always making sure to use that just enough and just in time access that PIM offers, the Azure AD PIM offers.
I see. So I only want to give people just the absolute minimum of what they need to do their jobs and no more.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And then I trust nobody. So if anyone made it into the building or made it into my system, at every point I'm checking credentials, I'm looking at badges and all those kind of things, except digitally.
You got it.
Cool.
So partners have kind of been working closely with Microsoft to keep up to date with the latest security best practices and guidance, and kind of making sure that they're always taking advantage of the newest services to really ensure this zero trust security. So I have a slide I want to show you, and I'll bring it up right here. So Azure Lighthouse was built as a solution to kind of help bring more automation and help scale the delivery of managed services with greater visibility, security, and governance. Customers are also benefiting from this visibility, security, and governance as they're able to delegate secure and granular Azure RBAC that they can then revoke at any time. So previously, Azure Lighthouse was really designed only so that you could have standing access with what are known as permanent roles. But now, with this public preview API release version, you can have just-in-time access with eligible roles. So kind of what this kind of brings is these eligible roles bring is it kind of really allows the service provider to then to be able to activate the role before they actually before access is actually granted. So what in addition to that, what that could also mean, though, is that each eligible can also have a set of approvers who can then approve the activation request before the role is actually granted. So in addition to that, these eligible roles also offer the ability for the operator to have to MFA before gaining this privileged access. So it really adds that extra layer of security. So
MFA is a multi-factor auth, so the person is being challenged. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, each operator is going to have to multi-factor authenticate with their mobile device or whatever they're using for that, and then they will gain access to the role.
Cool.
So all of this is available at no charge to the customer. So if you're not using Azure Lighthouse with Azure AD PIM, then ask your service provider to use it. And the only requirement is that your service provider really use that each user that's on the service provider tenant that is using Azure AD PIM has that EMS E5 or Azure AD Premium P2 license. So in this diagram on over here, I can kind of see that I have some customers, tenants, and then a managing tenant. And within the managing tenant, there's kind of three users. One of them is just kind of using Azure Lighthouse without Azure AD PIM. And so they don't have to have the license. But then the other two kind of are using this Azure AD PIM capability that we're offering. And one of them is an approver. So whenever the eligible role is activated by user one, request to be activated, then the approver then has to approve it. So I'll hand it off to Seth now to start our demo here. Show you what this looks like.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan. And Scott, it's great to be here on the show. Very exciting. Before we get started, let me show you what the onboarding process looks like. So let me share my screen, and you should be able to see this JSON. And what this kind of represents is the ARM template. The ARM template describes what the delegation details look like, right? We have a customer who's delegating either a resource group or a subscription, and they have to specify what the delegation contract would look like. And even though it's a delegation contract, the customer at any point can revoke that access that the service provider has. So before this public preview API that we've that we've just released, we just had authorizations, and the authorizations describe the standing access that a user group or service principal would have. So in this case, we have a security group which just has reader permission, and this is an RBAC role. Now, with the kind of PIM integration that we have, we introduced eligible authorizations. And with eligible authorizations, we describe the just-in-time access. So in this particular case, this security group has the network contributor role. And we can also specify a just-in-time access policy. What that entails is during the request process, right, when the service provider is making that just-in-time access request, do we want them to do two-factor authentication? In this case, yes, through Azure. Do we want to specify approvers that need to explicitly approve the just-in-time access request? And you can specify up to 10 approvers within the service provider tenant. In this case, I have a PIM approvers group, security group that would have to explicitly approve any just-in-time access requests for the network contributor role. So now that you kind of had that context of how the onboarding process looks like, because essentially this is, again, the ARM template that the customer would deploy on their side. Once it's deployed, the service provider would have that access. It's kind of the convenience of Azure Lighthouse onboarding. And of course, we have other ways of onboarding. This is just one of the more common ways. Now, if we switch gears, I want to show you what the customer experience looks like on Portal once they've onboarded. So let me show you my screen here on Portal. I've logged in as some customer. Let me go into Azure Lighthouse, and let me see my service provider offers. Let me click on delegations, and I can see that Relic Cloud Managed Services, that's the service provider tenant, I have onboarded to Lighthouse and have delegated my Visual Studio subscription to the Relic Cloud Managed Services tenant. If I click on role assignments, I can see what kind of access I gave Relic Cloud. I can see that they have standing reader access, and I can see that they have the contributor access that is of type eligible, meaning if they want to get that privileged access, they would have to go through the just-in-time access request flow. And I'll show you that in just a second. Now, if for whatever reason I would like to revoke access, I would like to revoke the service provider's access to my subscription, I can do so at any time by simply deleting the delegation. So that's what the customer experience looks like, right? The onboarding process, we wanted to make it as smooth as possible for the customer. We also wanted them to have that assurance that at any point they can remove a delegation as well as kind of audit the delegation as need be. Now let me show you what the service provider experience looks like on Portal. So if I go to my Portal session here, I have logged in to the Relic Cloud Managed Services tenant as Saif Kayani. Think of me as an engineer within the service provider tenant. Let me go to Azure Lighthouse. Let me click Manage My Customers and click Delegations. So you can see that I only have the one tenant showing, right, which is Saif's tenant. I can see the subscription, and I can see the role assignments given for this delegation. The reality is, if I'm a service provider, I'm potentially managing hundreds of customers, thousands of resources, and in some cases, many more. But we have a very convenient global subscriptions filter. That allows me to specify the tenant. So in this case, I have these tenants that are either native, like the Relic Cloud Managed Services, that is my service provider tenant, but then I also have other tenants that have delegated their resources to me. I can also see which subscriptions are delegated to the particular tenant. So we have, let's actually switch to one of these other offers. So under the Microsoft customer tenant, we were delegated the Lambda Healthcare subscription. And we can see that the view changed. Now we're just seeing the Microsoft delegations. Let me look at this one, Lambda Healthcare. Let me look at the role assignments. So if I go to role assignments, you'll see that we have the standing reader access, and the eligible access that we have is the network contributor role. Now, let's say I want to do some privileged actions. Let's say maybe I want to service a request by the customer. If I click on Manage Eligible Roles, this launches you to our new, to kind of the new PIM experience, right? This is made possible with our kind of partnership with the Azure AD PIM team. We have an integration which allows service providers to go through this just-in-time access flow for any privilege requests they need to make. And you can see that I have that network contributor role ready to be activated. So let's click Activate. It's validating the request, and while it's validating, that's when it determines whether or not two-factor authentication is needed. Now, I actually already went through the two-factor authentication process beforehand, so that wasn't needed. I can specify the custom activation start time if I want to delay the start time of the role. In this case, I want it to be as soon as possible. I only need about an hour to do the work I need to do. And let me write my reason, just servicing a request. I'll click Activate. Eventually, it says your request is pending for approval. Now, remember how I showed you that delegation contract, and in it, within the just-in-time access policy, you can specify approvers. And we specified a security group as the approver. So anyone within that security group can approve. Let's say it's my boss. So let me actually show you what that looks like. So now I've logged in as the boss. I've logged in as one of the users in the approver group. I would get an email notification saying, hey, Saif Kayani is requesting the network contributor role. Would you like to approve? When I click that link, it would take me here. And now I can see, yep, Saif Kayani is requesting network contributor role for the Lambda Healthcare subscription. Why? To service a request. And he only needs about an hour to do his work. Looks good to me. So let me go ahead and approve. Hit confirm, and my job as the approver is now complete. Now the user who made the request would get an email saying your request has been approved. You now have the network contributor role. So now let me switch back to that user. So I'm back as the user who made the request for the just-in-time access. If I go to active assignments, eventually I will see the network contributor role. While it's waiting to complete the approval process, I can show you another convenient tool we have, which is the audit logs. Here you can see what's been going on within this service provider tenant. We can see that just within the last few minutes, Saif Kayani made a request for the network contributor role. There was a approval request sent out. The request was approved. And then we can see that just recently, the member, Saif Kayani, got the network contributor role. So these audit logs kind of give our service providers yet another tool to create a secure management experience. And now if I go back to my roles, it should show me that the request is approved eventually. But the kind of main thing that we want to show here is this whole integration that we have with the PIM team, this whole just-in-time access that we've introduced within Azure Lighthouse is really giving our service providers the tools that they need to secure their customer resources. Now, obviously, there are transitive benefits to the customer as well. For the customers, they have that assurance that their resources are secure, that service providers have only that have just-in-time access to do any privileged actions on their resources, and they have just enough access with being able to specify the RBAC roles. Now, it seems that the network contributor role has been activated. Great. Now I can see that it's letting me deactivate it. So I have the role activated. It tells me what the end time is. So now as the engineer within the service provider tenant, I can go on, do whatever privilege actions I need to do. Once I'm all done, I can either click deactivate, or if I didn't, it would automatically deactivate on its own. And
Yeah, that's the thing about this whole new way of thinking that's so fundamental. Like, we're used to people having passwords, and if you have the password, you're the admin and you're in charge of everything and you have full power. You either have a skeleton key or you have nothing. And what I'm hearing you say is that you've got just enough and just-in-time access. So people have the minimum thing that they need to do their job and a time window. And that is a completely new way of thinking about things. It's a much more granular way than saying, here are the keys on the ring of all the keys to the kingdom.
absolutely, Scott. And, I would imagine in one of the previous Azure Friday talks, you kind of, made the comment about like being a service provider, right? If you're a service provider, you're kind of, offering managed services to like a mom and pop type shop. It gives them that kind of assurance, right? That the service provider is doing their due diligence to really create a secure management experience. So it's really all about creating a secure environment, giving that peace of mind to the customer. So that is pretty much it for the demo. I'll kind of hand it back to you if you had any questions for myself or Meagan.
Cool. That sounds great. Let's bring Meagan back over and we'll head towards the end. Hey.
Hey, thanks, Scott. So yeah, if you guys want to check out this preview here, jump on this preview. You can see if you're a customer, check out our ACOM page, where you can see all of these great benefits. And if you're a partner, go ahead and check out our docs of that kind of detail how to get started. So.
Yep. And by ACOM, you mean Azure.com. So the Azure.com Lighthouse page has got great documentation and details, and you can sign up and check this out right away.
Yep.
Fantastic. I am learning all about Azure AD PIM and just in time and just the right amount of access that I might need today here on Azure Friday.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of Azure Friday. Now I need you to like it, comment on it, tell your friends, retweet it, watch more Azure Friday.